My interest in pork goes back about 45 years. I grew up in foster homes and institutions and actually worked on a farm for many, many years. We had no indoor plumbing, outhouse, you boil your water, you get well water, and I slopped hogs the old-fashioned way, so don't let the suit fool you. Okay. Back then, our security was a yard light, good neighbors, and a 12-gauge shotgun. That was our security mechanism. And a lot has changed since then, some for the better, some not for the better. And what I want to do is just take a few minutes and share some ideas with you that hopefully will help you and be directly applicable to you on your property today. And I know Cindy has a couple of plans she's going to talk about, and I got to tell you, I've looked at her plans, and they're phenomenal. So they did a really good job of those, and I know she's going to talk about them, but they're solid. I've done risk management for decades, including a complete risk management review of the entire SEAL teams. And I can tell you that's a very, very solid product that will help you from day one. So, we have threats and risks. What are they? Well, a few natural disasters. Actually, natural disasters are our biggest threat here in Iowa. You saw what happened in Oklahoma and more, and then just last week. That can happen right here in Iowa, and in fact has happened in Iowa. We talked about the flooding. It's either feast or famine with water, right? It's like turn the spigot on a little bit, not all the way, not off. So we have these natural disasters, that can hurt us. We have agro and agri-terrorism, and we've seen that primarily with the mink release. It always amazes me that folks can release mink into the wild so they die, and somehow that's a good thing. I mean, it's truly stunning. A disease outbreak. I corrected people for a very, very, very long time when they called a certain bug the swine flu. It's almost like The Far Side with the pig and the cow arguing, and they're calling names, and the cow says swine flu, and the pig goes mad cow. So we have theft of animals, theft of equipment, price of pork, and pork as a commodity is worth stealing. I mean, anybody argue with that? I mean, it's they're worth stealing, and so they're worth protecting. Theft of equipment. I know in swine production, the same drugs are not used as they are in horse production that have street value, but there's drugs nonetheless. And of course, theft of equipment and cybercrime. How many people in here have a wireless system in their house? Okay. Do you know if it broadcasts or not? There's something called an SSID, and it's set to broadcast from default. When you name your wireless connection, that says, hey, here I am to everybody. A lot of systems are not even locked down, so somebody can drive by, hijack your wireless, steal money, do child porn, and guess who's the FBI's house shows up at? Your house. So there's not time to go into things in depth, but simple things like setting your wireless router to not broadcast. Have encryption that comes with it. Have a complex password. See, the thing is, if your wireless doesn't transmit, then the bad guy has to guess two things: what your system name is and what your password is. And use special characters and numbers, and don't use your last name, your date of birth, those kind of things. If somebody has access to your cyber information, they have access to your whole operation. So those are some of the risks. Risk is is a thing that it's like this big thing. It's like, oh my gosh, it's this big ball. What is it? Well, risk really addresses really only three things. What can hurt me? How bad can it hurt me? And what can I do about it? All risk management boils down to those three things. And, what can you do with risk? Well, there are fundamentally three different things. You can insure it, you can mitigate it, but you have to accept some of it. There's no 100% insurance. And, what's mitigation? Things like Cindy's going to talk about is mitigation. Those are steps that you can take to reduce the risk of an event occurring. And what are we talking about? We're talking about severity and probability. Probability being a measurement of the frequency of the event, severity or criticality being how bad it's going to be if it happens. So that's part of what these plans that Cindy's going to give you. That's part of what these templates do. They have that kind of stuff built in, so you don't have to go back 300 years, get a psychic, and contact Thomas Bayes and get the Bayesian statistical model that all probability is based off of and ask him about it. All that's built in. So in essence, the weighted values are built in, and that's why this is such a cool tool. The number one thing I see that's a problem is people are pretty good with insurance, but they over-accept and under-mitigate risk. Over-accept and under-mitigate. And what I'm asking you to do is to please don't do that. If you use reasonable tools and reasonable measures and mitigate all you can, what you've done is two things. First of all, you've reduced the probability of an event occurring. And second of all, you've minimized the impact in your recovery time should it occur. And both those things are real money in the bank. So, what are the consequences? Well, you could lose your enterprise. You could lose your farm, your operation, reputation damage, government fines, and in fact, criminal charges. And of course, there's a bunch of legal issues. If you poison other people's property, they can sue you also. One of the things that's really important to understand is there's fundamentally two types of damage. There's compensatory and punitive. Compensatory are what are commonly referred to as actual damages. And that means if I do something to you and your cost is $100,000 and you get a jury award or a civil finding, I have to pay you $100,000 to make you whole. That's covered by insurance normally, notwithstanding the deductible. What's not covered by insurance is punitive damages. And that means if I do something to you so egregious that it goes from simple negligence to gross negligence, then that's where you see the $10 million jury awards. 100,000 of that might be compensatory, but the rest is punitive damages that there's no insurance to pay for. One of the reasons it's really important, in my view, that you follow these plans that Cindy is going to lay out is because those create a de facto professional standard and guideline. So if you follow those, that's a defense if something's happening to you in the future, if you've done that work. So not only is it a good business case, but it also minimizes the probability of a lawsuit or a government fine being successful, because if something happens, and it does to all of us, that's why they call them accidents, right? Not on purposes. Something happens, and you say, hey, look, I did this, and this. I don't know what more I could have done. A jury is going to say, looks like you did a lot, and it was an accident. And that's the difference between simple and gross negligence. So what are some of the things you can do? Lock your homes, lock your cars, lock your buildings, lock your fuel tanks, remove or secure keys from machinery. We never locked anything on the farm. The keys were in all the tractors. Everything was open. House was open. The car was open. Can't do that anymore. Just can't. Use lighting. You know, we always had a yard light. The question is that adequate lighting? Adequate lighting? Probably not. If you think of security as an onion, then the concept of a layered approach comes in. So what is the outer layer? The outer layer is outside your perimeter. And then the perimeter is the second layer. And the third layer may be your barn, your confinement facility, your house. And so if you layer security measures in, that makes it harder for the bad guy or bad guys to hurt you because you have multiple layers of security versus one layer only that he or she has to get around. It's important to use, so getting back to lighting just a minute, it's important to light up the perimeter and to shine the lights out. Do not upset your neighbors and have them call me. But it's important to use perimeter lighting. Signage is important. Posting, no trespassing. This is private property, no trespassing. There's a concept called CPTED, and CPTED is crime prevention through environmental design. You see in front of federal buildings, you have these concrete planters. Well, that's really a CPTED device so that people can't drive a truck into a federal building. You see the landscaped architecture, that's so people can't drive a truck or car over it, make a car or truck an explosive. You know, how does that impact you? Make it more difficult for somebody to get in and steal your equipment, steal your hogs, make it more difficult for them to get in. Have a gate. Do not allow them to drive right in. Maybe in the middle of the gate you have a concrete post. So if they try to bump the gate open, not going to be so easy. My point is it doesn't have to be expensive to be effective. So think how you would break in and then put things in called countermeasures to reasonably protect that. Certainly recommend closed-circuit television cameras, alarms, perhaps card access to secured areas. One of our services that we've seen a growth in is remote viewing, where we actually monitor cameras remotely because you can't be there 24 hours. And so the cool part about that is you have somebody watching and can immediately react to actionable information instead of you getting a historical record of how you got victimized. So you get to watch yourself being victimized, not fun. Other measures you can take, implement and keep current emergency action plans and the crisis response plans. How many people work in a place where you, or have worked in a place where you have a disaster plan? Does it get updated or kind of sit on the shelf? Kind of a little of both. Most disaster plans are written, they're too thick, nobody knows about them. And then a crisis will occur and somebody will say, where's that plan at? And they'll get off, dust it off. Now which chapter do I go to? It's not workable. What's workable is to have a short, meaning brief, have a brief plan that has the right kind of information in it. And as conditions change and as things change on your property, update it. because otherwise it's stale. There's something called a tabletop exercise, and it's pretty easy to do. I know if you go to the FEMA website and enter tabletop exercise, there's even a free online course you can take about how to do that. But what you do is just get around a table and say, okay, this has happened. Okay, what do we do? And now this has happened. So it's pretty easy to do, and that's how you test your plan. And then you build that information in afterwards to make it better. Do background checks for potential employees. Statistically, about 85% of all theft nationally comes from employees from organizations. Why? Because they have access to your place. One of the probably most significant things you can do is to set up really what I call an expanded neighborhood watch program. And, you know, what does that mean? That means get your neighbors together and form a network. Have a listserv on your computer. And if any one person sees something out of the ordinary, have them get it to everybody else. Include law enforcement, the fire department, your county emergency manager. Does everybody know that they have an emergency manager for their county, a coordinator? Critically important, because they're the people who are going to truly help you when things are at their worst. So what's missing a lot of times is public-private partnerships. I'm a strong believer in that. If you trust your law enforcement officers locally, your chief or sheriff, you can even share your crisis plan with him or her so that they know. And of course, you know, what does that entail? Well, it entails what you're going to do. It includes who the key information are. It includes schematics about how to shut off the gas in your place. So if you get a fire in one of your buildings, the firefighters actually know where the shutoff valves are. Again, they can help you if you help them, but it truly has to be a partnership. And have regular meetings. The last thing I'm going to mention here is to just give you a quick overview of the public intelligence network sharing that goes on. After 9/11, we had law enforcement intelligence network regions, and if you divide the state into thirds, vertically and horizontally in the middle, you'll get Region 1 that starts at Sioux City, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're in Region 5. And what happened is law enforcement and other people from those regions got together and shared information, both up and down with the state back to local authorities. And what that gives you is if somebody committed a burglary in Webster City and then they went to Sioux City and they went to Council Bluffs, all of a sudden that has visibility, that information exchange. And it goes to the state, federal government, and back down, so people can always get you information that you may need to run your operation better. I have left some of my cards back on that table along with this sheet, and I would ask you to pick one up and give it to your farm supply stores. It's just indicators of terrorism. It's a U.S. government publication, but really good indicators. It has the disclaimer on the bottom about important to remember that just because somebody has different speech actions does not mean they're guilty. I put in front of that political correctness disclosure. So that did not come from the federal government. That came from me. So a reminder to always be politically correct. Cindy?
Thanks, Tom. I think Tom did a really good job of setting the stage for this new tool that we have that is funded with the checkoff dollars, and it is the Farm Level Crisis Plan. And this plan is really designed to take what Tom was talking about to the next level and help producers, help you all at the farm level to understand what it is that you can do and to make it easy to put together the kind of plans that Tom was talking about. As we talk about crisis planning, sometimes it's a little scary to think that we may need a crisis plan for our farm, but there are a couple good reasons for crisis plans. First of all, bad things happen to good people, and I think that that's something we really need to think about. This can happen to any of us on our farms, but if we've taken some time and thought about our plans in advance, we're able to really take better care of the people on our farms, to take better care of the business side of our operations, the business side of our farms, and then also those pigs that we're caring for every day to make sure that we can continue to move forward with that potential care too. Here's a slide that shows us a few of the things that we are vulnerable, a few of the areas that the industry is vulnerable in. And when I first put this slide together, it was like, okay, here's some pretty cool graphics. Every time I see this slide, I get a little bit more concerned about what's on here. I think that it's really important to understand what all these aspects are. Of course, down here in the corner, that is not a pig. That is an example, however, of foot and mouth disease. Two examples there of what you would see on your farm with a foreign animal disease outbreak. Foot and mouth disease, what we consider one of the greatest vulnerabilities or threats to the U.S. pork industry. The Mercy for Animals action there is really looking at folks who don't understand what we do and don't condone the way that we raise our pigs because of lack of knowledge, but are attacking our industry. And that upper corner again, people who think that we are back in the 1950s in our pork production, which we all know modern pork production is so different than it was, but there are so many people who don't understand. The antibiotic use or medication use in our industry also creates a potential vulnerability for us. And again, misinformation about pork production from the Consumer Reports as well as other misinformation that's out there. In the far corner, the avian and swine influenzas and the vulnerabilities there, diseases that could impact us, as well as situation with feed and feed availability. So just a few of the things that we need to be thinking about that are real situations on our farms. And as an industry, we also talk about and prepare for how to deal with those issues. As an industry, we like to look at the unified approach. We have 4 levels of crisis plans in the pork industry. We have the National Crisis Plan, which brings together the organizations that represent the industry, the Pork Board, the National Pork Producers Council, the American Association of Swine Veterinarians, and the U.S. Meat Export Federation all are teamed up on one single crisis plan to work to prepare and to respond to events that happen to the industry. Then we have a state association crisis plan. Many of you obviously are active in your state pork associations. I would assume those state associations have a crisis plan specific to that state, but then it also ties into the national crisis plan as well. The farm level crisis plan that we're talking about today is designed specifically for you on your farm, and we've made it easy for you to use, so it shouldn't be intimidating. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the important thing is that it links into the state plan and it links into the national plan. So if something happens on your farm, you're not the only one out there having to deal with it. You're tied into the industry, lots of resources, lots of support from the industry. And then also our show pig crisis plan. We have over 2,000 pigs just down there at the fairgrounds at the barns today showing. So we worked very closely with our show pig industry as well to develop a crisis plan, and that links into that national plan. And all of these plans are built on the same framework. The reason we wanted to do that was to make sure that as we talked between the different plans, whether you're at the farm level, whether you're at the state level or the national level, all of the plans are developed the same. And they're developed as a tool to assist you. You guys are the most important resource that you have on your farm. You know your farm better than anybody else, and you're going to be making those decisions responding to a crisis. These plans are designed to help you think through more clearly and be able to respond more quickly and bring your expertise to the table. In a crisis, we look at 5 steps. We look at assessing the situation, and that's what this plan is going to help you do. First of all, assess the situation on your farm, determine who the crisis team needs to be, and be ready to activate that team. Make sure that your response plan is in place and you know what to do for the various responses or various situations that may develop. Be able to execute that plan, and then finally go back and evaluate that plan. You're going to hope that you never have the same situation on your farm again. But if you do, if you've gone back and said, you know, if we would have just done this at that point, it'll make the plan better for the next time. So the Farm Level Crisis Plan, which we have copies of the CD back there on the table for you. It was developed to be very dynamic. Takes about 45 minutes to fill out is all, and that's how we designed it, so that you would be able to actually get it done, because we also understand time commitments and time constraints. So it's dynamic, which means when you start to fill in the blanks, it will ask you questions. You start to fill in the blanks, it will populate throughout the entire document. So you answer the questions, and by the time you get to that end of that, about 45 minutes or so, you'll have a complete crisis plan for your farm, specific to your farm, specific to the site that you made it about, or to your overall farm. It's also available on pork.org. And then what we want you to do at the end is to print out that paper copy, because who knows what the crisis may be. You may not have access to electricity. You may not have access to your files. You may not, if you have a fire in your barn, you may not be able to access this information. So keep copies of it off-site. We recommend, Tom talked about working with your local law enforcement. We recommend that after you build this plan, you sit down with law enforcement and show them your plan, help them to understand what it is that you've developed and how they may play a role in your crisis plan. Which leads us to the Emergency Action Plan. Now, if you're part of the Pork Quality Assurance Plus program, you have completed an Emergency Action Plan, or should have as part of PQA Plus. That Emergency Action Plan is specific to operations. So it really tells you what to do if you have a manure disaster, if you have a tornado, if you have a fire, the physical thing that you're going to do on your operation. This farm level plan is designed to work with your reputation. So let's talk about the flooding that's going on. This year we haven't seen any pictures. In the past we saw some farms that got flooded, and it created a little bit of a media stir. Think about how you would respond to that situation if it was your farm. Your first commitment is to give the best possible care and provide protection for your family and your employees on your operation. The second thing that you need to do is make sure that those pigs are well taken care of in any kind of a disaster situation. And the third thing is to make sure that you can still be in business after that situation is corrected. So you want to return to business as usual as quickly as possible, but you need to make sure that there is a business to come back to. And the farm level crisis plan is designed to assist you with that. I just want to show you a couple slides. It's easy, okay? It's scary to think about crisis planning when you would probably rather be in the barns working with pigs. But we made it easy for everybody. It is, again, dynamic, so it self-populates. I've just got a few slides to show you. We've got information in here that walks you through exactly what you'll need to know to develop this plan. If you think about the triggers of a potential crisis at the farm level, here are a few that we built the plan around. A potential welfare issue that you might have on your farm. Someone accuses you of not giving the proper care. A water or an air quality issue. A natural disaster that could occur on your farm. Foreign animal disease outbreak. A human health concern. Or a community relations issue. We hope none of these things happen on anybody's farm, but we want you to have the tools to be prepared to deal with it should they occur. The other good thing is thinking through these may move you away from these potential situations on your farm. Again, it self-populates, so as you start to fill in the information, then you can expect to see that on subsequent pages. And we know that some farms, there's such a variation. We've got some farms that have a huge staff, other farms that are just one or two family members. So they may have multiple roles on here, but it's set up so that you can make sure that you know who is dealing with crisis response, who's dealing with the media, who's dealing with your employees, who's going to let your lender or your vendor or the folks that you work with know that there's a situation and what you're doing about it. All the plans in the industry are built with this color coding: green, yellow, orange, and red. We know that green is an everyday situation that we have to deal with. A red level threat obviously is the most severe or intense threat that we could see. And then it tells you what to do. As you fill in these blanks, this plan actually writes out what you are going to do on your farm, again, specific to your farm. Crisis planning can be a little bit intimidating, and it can be one of those things that scares you a little bit, because we start to think about, wow, could this really happen? But think about, as a child, when you go to school, the very first day of kindergarten, they ring the fire alarm, and everybody holds hands and walks out the door, and the teacher leads you to safety. As you get older, you get more familiar with what's happening with the fire alarm when it rings, what you should do. Today, as adults, we know that if the fire alarm rings, we look for the red exit sign and we walk to safety. The crisis plan is that fire alarm for your farm. It's that level of protection that gets you to safety, that in the event of something severe happening will allow you to still be in business after that situation.